This is an educational video about sketch comedy. First, we have to figure out what sketch comedy is. Sketch comedy is the compilation of comedy sketches, which in themselves are short and funny written works performed on stage or recorded in audio or video format. Compile these together, and you have sketch comedy. It's important to note that sketch comedy could come in multiple different forms. That is exactly right, me with Beanie On. Shows like SNL and Studio C are live in front of a theater and are obviously sketch comedy shows. This is the same with Key and Peele and The Chappelle Show, where they're recorded and back to back, maybe cut up with some talking in the middle by the host. But many other shows do the same thing, but with a gimmick, so it may not be obvious. Shows like Robot Chicken, The Eric Andre Show, Sesame Street, and Whose Line Is It Anyways are all sketch comedy shows. But with their own branding and gimmick, you may not even tell that they're all following the same structure that a sketch comedy needs to be. This just goes to show how far you could stretch the limits of sketch comedy. Now that we have sketch comedy defined, let's look at the history.
Great balls of fire.
Wait, not that kind of vaudeville. Now this is vaudeville. It's kind of creepy, okay? Vaudeville is a type of theater and entertainment from France in the 19th century, late 19th century and early 20th. Kind of like a circus where multiple different acts that didn't relate to each other at all happened back to back. As you watch these clips, you could kind of see how it connects to the modern day sketch comedy. Just like sketch comedy today, you could see how the scenes varied drastically. They had nothing to do with each other than to be comedic. Now, when researching the vaudevilles, I went through a lot of scenes and I saw a lot of stuff, and many of these vaudevilles would include animals. Now, I chose not to include these because of the obvious animal cruelty that was involved in making these sketches, along with obvious racial undertones as well as pictured in this poster for a vaudeville. I only bring these up because I think it's important to highlight the past and the roots of vaudevilles and how they weren't just some good thing that happened. They were without a doubt a product of their time. But with that being said, the vaudevilles did lead to sketch comedy as we know it now. What looks like circus acts put back to back then are basically the roots of sketch comedy. This is my favorite act. It's also the only one I found funny and didn't make me uncomfortable. But sifting through all of it, you could definitely tell it's sketch comedy at its barest form. Now you must be thinking, well, we know what sketch comedy is and we know its history. What's the point? What a stupid question, Jonah. Now that you know the history and the definition of sketch comedy, you are better able to create and identify it. Now you must be wondering, what are some good examples of sketch comedy? Damn, that's a much better question than the last one because the answer is not very clear. Comedy is subjective, so something that I find funny like the Eric Andre Show may be like someone's worst fear. Now my personal recommendations are Alternado, the Eric Andre Show, Loiter Squad, and of course the Chappelle Show. For kids, I would probably go with Studio C or Disney's So Random, or even The Muppets or Sesame Street. If you want some classics, well, you could basically watch anything from the 90s. It was practically just sketch comedy back then. Now, once again, let's go over what sketch comedy is, and we'll play a little game to define it. Sketch comedy is the compilation of comedy sketches. Here's a handy checklist to make sure you got sketch comedy down. You must have a script, a performance, more than one scene. Each scene must be less than around 10 minutes. And of course, you need comedy. One thing I do want to add though, as someone who's been in theater all my life and primarily a comedic person and actor, I want to say this. I've worked with a lot of actors who don't feel that they're comedic or funny enough to do sketch comedy or any type of comedy in theater. But I just have one thing to say. don't think of yourself like that. You all are amazing actors, and one trick I know is that if you really think you're not funny, use that to your advantage. Okay? Sit there on stage and make unfunny jokes and then point out that they're unfunny, and that will get you laughs. It's as easy as that. Anyone could do this, and anyone could sit down, write a sketch or read a sketch and just make a great performance out of it. Now it's funny game time. Here's what's gonna happen. I'll give you 3 examples of me consuming a media, and you tell me if it's sketch comedy or not. I sit down and watch TV, and something funny on screen like the politics is up. And after less than 10 minutes, I switch the channel to something else funny like men's lacrosse. And after another 10 minutes, I switch the channel and it's something else funny like, I don't know, more politics. Is this sketch comedy? I'll give you a couple seconds. The answer is, of course not. It doesn't meet any of the requirements other than being absolutely funny. Here's another example. While absolutely trying to avoid my girlfriend, I turn on my phone and I scroll through TikTok for a minute. Is this sketch comedy? All the videos are less than 10 minutes, and they're all funny. Is this sketch comedy? I'll give you a few seconds. The answer is no. Not only are none of the videos on my For You page funny and I have to read like 50 words, but they're not composed in a way that is intended, and they're not always comedic. It is not a form of sketch comedy. They are also not scripted. For the last example, I sit down and I open my phone and I look up sketch comedy. And then I watch a bunch of examples of sketch comedy. Guess if this is sketch comedy or not. The answer is, it actually depends. If it's a compilation made by fans or something, it probably doesn't count because it wasn't compiled correctly like the person wanted it. There's a lot of different aspects. Basically, it could be yes or no. It could be yes or no. Oh my god. Now that you know the basics of sketch comedy, including the definition, the history, some examples of it, and how to make it, I suggest you go make some sketch comedy of your own. And since this video is under 10 minutes, hopefully will be followed up by more videos like this and has a bunch of jokes sprinkled throughout. Well, technically you could call this sketch comedy. Well, I got some places to be, so I'll see you guys later.